Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? My name is Scott Harvey. I'm with AIA Homes Tour Committee, and I am here to introduce the Hive by Nicole Blair, who is Studio 512. And Nicole Blair is our principal architect, and Sofia Bruni is the other Homes Tour Committee member. And I don't know if we're going to see her on the screen or not. We have one other guest who is not quite, she was having a technical problem, but the homeowner, Kirthy Fix, who is a documentary filmmaker, is also hopefully going to be with us throughout the video. And so that is our introduction. And are you guys ready?
We'll take a minute just for people to gather.
Okay, we're going to wait a minute here, and then we're going to go to a live video with Nicole. Hello again. They've asked me to announce names again for new people who have come on. My name is Scott Harvey. I'm with the AIA Homes Tour Committee. I'm also with the Urban Design Committee. I'll be talking a little bit later at the end of this presentation about the middle density aspect of this project. This is The Hive by Nicole Blair, who is the principal architect. She will be the primary speaker. Sofia Bruni is our other Homes Tour member here. I don't think we're going to have her on the screen, but she's running around doing technical stuff for us. And hopefully we're going to get Kirthy Fix, who is the homeowner, on. She was having some technical problems. She's up in Michigan on the Zoom call. So with that, are you guys ready? Mm-hmm. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Nicole.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Hive. It's great to have you here. If you don't know this already, the Hive is an ADU, it's an accessory dwelling unit. It is a kind of like a granny flat that sits behind the main house. People would be surprised to know, or they're usually surprised to know that the shape of the Hive is actually based on a lot of constraints from the city of Austin. So there's an angled utility easement at the back. There's a 5-foot setback on the side, about a 10-foot setback from the main house. And then in the city of Austin, you're only allowed to build on 45% of the lot, and that's the footprint of the building and the parking. So when Kirthy hired me, we did a feasibility study at first, and we quickly realized that because behind her main bungalow, the Hive footprint could only be about 320 square feet. So once we factored in all of the easements and the setbacks and the parking, we knew we were going to be working with a really small footprint. And for me, that was actually really exciting. I kind of knew at that point that if, Kirthy wanted a 1-bedroom apartment with a full kitchen, laundry, an office, a private bedroom and a bath. And I knew at that point we were probably looking at closer to 500 or 600 square feet. And that once we fit that first floor program in and then put in a stair to code, there was really no way the second floor wasn't going to get pushed away from the first floor. And that started for me to recall some precedents that I had learned about in architecture school at Rice. From a Japanese architect, Fujimori, who has these very whimsical structures that kind of push away, the second floor pushes away from the first. And MVRDV, another firm that I was really interested in graduate school, that had these park pavilions that were made out of corten steel, where the walls were really kind of angled and moving away from the foundation. And so I knew as soon as we did that feasibility study that we were going to have an opportunity like that at the Hive. Here's a site plan where you can see exactly what I'm talking about. This is the utility easement at the back of the property that set up that back line for our building. You can see the parking and the existing bungalow in the front with the porch that was eating up the rest of our 45%. Here again on this site plan, you can see what that looks like in the neighborhood. I think you guys can see that on the missing middle poster. And I printed this here. If Chris is able to take a look at this, I'll flip through it. This was actually what I presented to Kirthy for our schematic design meeting. They were concepts and some precedents. And so this was the first thing I presented to her to show her kind of where I thought the direction of the project was gonna go. So again, this is that MVRDB project in the Fujimori. And I'll come back to this one in a second. I'll just flip through this. And I'll talk about that in a second as well. But this was kind of the very first thing I presented that kind of kicked off the project. So these images right here kind of bring me to my first topic of the project. So actually I was looking back at my notes, and even though I didn't remember that Kirthy wanted like specifically a green building, I looked back at my notes, and during our first phone call, she had actually asked for 3 things. She had asked for a small apartment, she had asked for recycled materials, and she had asked for, I think it was like a whimsical design, or I think she said something like creative design. And I didn't actually remember that until I had looked back at those initial notes, like just yesterday. But I think that really planted that seed of using more recycled materials, and also having a client that was kind of open to something a little bit different. That really was the result of the Hive. And the first instance of that was actually during the design process. Kirthy, on the main bungalow of the house, the front house, was taking out a corrugated metal roof. And when she took down the corrugated metal roof to replace it, she found all of these shakes underneath. And one of those pictures that I just showed you in the concepts were some pictures that Kirthy sent me when I was designing the ADU. And those are the shingles, these cedar shakes that were coming off of the house. And I have one of them left that we saved after all here. And so that was kind of that first moment in the design process where she was asking for how could we reuse these? How could we potentially incorporate this into the project? And I immediately thought it would be a really cool siding material, which is why some of these early concept images show that shake siding. But we didn't have enough to cover the whole building. So I started calling around, and actually one of the greatest things that happened to us during this project is a contractor that I've worked with a lot. His name is Mark Rayberg from Our Builders. He said not only did he have some material, he had taken some cedar shakes off of a project of his about 10 years ago, and he had them sitting in storage. And since they had been there for almost 10 years, he almost thought of them as kindling. So he said, come on over. He always called me Darlin. He's always like, Darlin, come on over and take a look at these shakes. And if you can use them and you can move them and store them, then you can have them. So I went over, and this is side by side what the shakes that came off of Kirthy's house look like, and the ones that Mark Rayberg had. And you can see, it's very clear to see that these are much more durable, much more, it's much more durable, a much higher quality product. So, and it turned out that he had enough of them to cover the entire project. So the roof and all the walls are covered with this shake. And this wall system is what's known as a rain screen. A rain screen means that the shakes are actually sitting on furring strips, and there's a waterproofing layer underneath that is actually where the water is draining. That waterproofing layer is, in this case, it's a Carlisle Whip 300 material. And I guess this was something I didn't really want to point out, but I was talking to Kirthi the other day and she said, should we tell them about this? And I think, you know, sometimes it makes sense. In this case, I was also the general contractor, and this was the first project I ever designed and general contracted. And one thing that we ended up coming back and looking at a little bit more was it turned out that water wasn't always draining underneath the shakes and on the whip layer. And so so at this inside corner of the house, Kirthi found that there was a lot of water that was coming down onto this window wall when it rained. And so I came back a couple of years later and we added that little kind of like a scupper at that corner to pull the water away from that inside corner. And we also ended up coming back and adding a small piece of steel to this exposed structural I-beam just to pull the water again that might be shutting down this side another couple of inches away from the window wall. So, you know, I think it's a lesson learned for the next one. And I think on any good project, there's always portions of the design, especially when you're trying something new, that might need to be addressed. Is Kirthi on? Yeah. Okay, does Kirthi have any comment?
Sorry, she just popped on.
Oh, she did, okay.
She was on.
All right, okay, well, when she pops on, maybe we'll ask her about that. Okay, let's, actually, maybe this is a great spot to take a look at the landscape. Kirthi didn't initially intend to hire a landscape architect at the start, but it was something that she was able to do towards the end of the project. And she hired probably definitely my favorite landscape architect in town, Dee Crane. And Dee Crane came up with a scheme. I actually printed their beautiful drawing, just schematic plan that they had come up with for the Hive. So this is the floor plan here. And really their concept was to add these beautiful windmill palm trees, which I think is just a really great addition. It really marries well with the Hive. Like, I think just the top heaviness of it, this idea, I think I was kind of hoping Kirthi would be able to chime in and talk about how what she was really wanting in the space was it to be more like a retreat. And I think the palm trees kind of add to that sense of it being a retreat. And I know privacy was a concern of hers, and all of the bamboo and kind of creating this backyard oasis. I think their decisions really made a difference. Again, back to that idea of reuse. Let's see, let's walk back to the back. That idea of material reuse. Dee Crane also fashioned this dry stacked limestone bench around this fire pit area, and those were from pieces of limestone that were already on the property. They also just changed the configuration of the pavers that were in front of the store. They were already on site. They just kind of arranged them in a different way. I think that kind of, again, goes back to this idea of reusing things that are here, working with some of the resources that you already have at hand. Keeps costs lower, and I think it just also makes good ecological sense. One of my favorite, let's see, I actually love this side of the building. This is more of a private side away from the main house. One of the things that I love about this. So I always saw this door as the back door. I'd say Kirthy always saw it as the front door. It was really important to her to have a door that no one would see her coming into. So you actually walk past the hive the way that the camera just did, and you walk to this what Kirthy would call the front door. Because we leaned this wall, because we leaned this wall, that porch was able to be a covered porch. And one of my favorite features that Kirthy really wanted incorporated was an outdoor shower. And by leaning this wall, it also just created just the right perfect space for an outdoor shower. If we're talking about strategies or ideas that may or may not be working, I think, again, I would come back to this shower. Something that I had done intentionally was to separate some of the shakes here to allow for some light and airflow to come through. And I also wanted, when this porch light was on at night, I was hoping this corner would act like a lantern. I've never heard anyone say that they experienced it that way, so I'm not sure that was as successful as I was hoping it would be. The outdoor shower with the exposed copper was fabricated by one of my favorite plumbers to work with that was always kind of up for doing something a little bit different, or just just trying something a little bit different. And we're gonna get to see one of my favorite pieces that we just worked on together upstairs. Should we head in? What do you think? Yeah? Okay. Is Kirthy here? Is she able to chime in at this point? No. Okay. All right. Let's just keep going. All right. Let's go inside. All right. Here we are in the kitchen. I think this is a great place to have a shout out to. Well, actually, I'll do that in just a second. Let's just talk. Well, okay. Let's see. Sure. Let's do a shout out to the cabinet maker. So, the cabinet maker on this project. His name is Matt Prime. His company is called Wish Tree Carpentry. All of the cabinetry in the kitchen is IKEA. And it has a custom long leaf pine front. So this is the dishwasher. You've got your basic IKEA trash drawer. This wall is leaning, so there's not as much space underneath this sink, but it leans out just enough to get a full countertop. I really wanted to make sure we kept the view through the stove. So this is a downdraft cooktop. And underneath we have room for all of the cooking utensils, or sorry, pots and pans really. And because we didn't get that full 2 foot of depth here, we placed the oven on this wall here. This wall here next to the stair became a storage wall. All of the cabinetry on this side of the stair that's adjacent to the stair is 12 inches deep. So we can get a lot of different kinds of storage here. I think Kirthy uses these for pantry. And then as soon as you're under the stair, you get 24 inches deep. So these drawers are deeper. We're under the stair at this point. You've got a full size, or sorry, it's more of an apartment size refrigerator, but it's again that 2 foot of depth, and a little utility closet. Down here, we were able to hide the mini split HVAC system, which I love, behind, so you can see it kind of hidden here. I will say upstairs, I wasn't able to accomplish that. That's maybe another sore spot in the design. On the ceiling is just your basic, everyday, common porcelain sockets, just a few dollars each. And I did like kind of a random pattern of them because I didn't see a gridded pattern that really made sense here. in the locations above the bar, which is kind of the dining area, I went ahead and added splitters there. So it kind of, again, that's a very common material that you can get from Home Depot, and it kind of adds like a little bit of a whimsical effect and more light where you want it. But really, any of these fixtures could serve that same purpose. This was it for people here that are listening in from Austin. This was an idea that I stole from Andy Colquitt. He's an artist in Austin, and he makes some really fantastic light fixtures with splitters. But back to the cabinets. I think the really important part about this is originally the budget really only allowed for us to do IKEA cabinets with white fronts. But Matt Prime was working on another project, another bungalow renovation, in which the lonely pine was coming out of the walls. And he had the idea that maybe it would be a good material for the cabinetry here. So he called me and said, I have this lonely pine coming out. Do you think we could use it for the fronts? I think it was really nice to be able to take advantage of that opportunity and kind of pivot and use that material. As the GC, as the architect and the GC, I think we were able to incorporate those ideas and changes into the design a little bit easier than I think it would have been if we were working with a separate architect and contractor. So that was an opportunity that I think really worked out here. And of course, this decision did cost more money for Kirthy, but also because I was GCing the project, we were able to switch. We were able to we had some budgets that hadn't been accounted for yet, and so we were able to spend more where we wanted to spend more, spend less where we wanted to spend less. Matt Prime not only built all of these, the cabinetry in the kitchen and the shelves. Upstairs, you'll see he built the full built-in desk. He built a queen-size bed with the countertops around that space, and all of the open shelving throughout the house. Yeah, so he did just an amazing job. Is Kirthy in a position to be able to jump in and comment or contribute?
No, I don't.
I was hoping she'd be. I was hoping we'd be kind of talking about this together. Let's see. Well, not yet. Let me grab a little sip of water if you don't mind. Let's see. All right. Well, I'll just keep going. Here's an early model. I wouldn't say this is even early. So kind of getting back to that GC, acting as the architect and the GC, and what kinds of opportunities that gave us. This was a model that I built, right, I think when we were permitting and bidding it. And you can see in this model that, here, should I just leave it down there? Okay, you can see in this model that we hadn't yet picked the windows. We hadn't yet picked the windows, and you can see the stackable laundry actually changed locations from what you'll see upstairs. In addition to that, Kirthy had really insisted on a bathtub, even though I had wanted a shower. And you'll notice that upstairs we ended up with, we actually installed a bathtub, and then later on when she saw it, she was like, you're right, it should be a shower. And so we'll take a look at what kind of opportunities that ended up leading to once we
Okay, Kurt, I was going to call you Kirthy. Nicole,
once we had, yes.
We have some
Is
questions
Kirthy here?
about the kitchen. So no, Kirthy's not here yet, but we have some questions about the kitchen. I thought we could just take a couple right now.
Okay, Okay, sure. Go ahead.
They're interested in what the backsplash is and would love to hear about the angled windows.
Okay, yeah, so the backsplash and actually all of the interior walls are a 3-coat stucco. I have been working with the same stucco guy for, I don't know, 10 years. I think he's amazing. Jose Rivera, I think you can find him on your list of subs. And he, yeah, so it's a great wall material, it's a natural material, and it also works as a backsplash. Maybe something you can see well here with the windows is another kind of recycled or not reused material in the space. So maybe maybe some of you might notice that the larger window that's above the cooktop is a steel window. And all of the larger steel windows and the casement windows in the house were actually originally installed in a house on the coast. It turned out that those windows were not hurricane proof, and so they had to come out, and that builder was selling them for about 1/10 of the cost. So we purchased all of these windows on Craigslist. We still needed a few operable windows. So the operable window over the kitchen is actually a Pella vinyl window. And we found that the Pella vinyl was the best match to, like, in terms of the frame, the squareness of the frame, to the La Cantina steel windows. And the vinyl actually slides pretty well on the angled wall. So it just ended up being a really great marriage. And I don't know anyone that's ever come to the Hive and noticed that we mixed window manufacturers. And I think that's something that I don't see very often. But it was a nice way for us to take advantage of these really beautiful, expensive windows and not have to buy new, just to reuse something that was already there.
Nicole, Kirthy is back if you want to have her.
Okay, yeah, can she
something.
chime in and tell us, like, what she thinks? Uh-oh. Is she, are you,
So you're taking,
Kirthy? Is anyone seeing?
hi, can you see me?
Yes, now I can see you.
Okay, it looks great. It's a very nice space to live in because the walls going out and all the windows makes it feel extremely spacious and airy and open, even when 2 people are in the house. And you have a real sense of the indoor-outdoor flow, which was very nice and very important to me. It's almost a sacred living space, honestly. It's very beautiful and very quiet and restorative.
I mean, that sounds great. Are we all on screen right now? Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, I think, were you able to hear part of the initial part of the tour, Kirthy?
You can ask me questions. I was in Struggle Town with technology. I'm actually using my sound person's phone to connect. So.
Okay. Well, I'll just keep going, and we can maybe chime in upstairs. I was hoping I was just showing the model with the bathtub to the shower, and I thought maybe you could speak to that. Maybe we can do that a little bit later. I think something that I don't think we realized was a stated goal of the project, but what ended up happening anyway, and I think when I look back on my original notes, maybe it was your stated goal. But I think there's really a local focus here. So what I mean by that is like Wish Tree Carpentry is really that their location where they're working their shop is really just a couple of miles from the Hive. Delta Millworks that makes the Shishoogi Bond flooring that we'll get to talk about in a minute is just a couple of miles from the Hive. Drop House and McFab, the metal workers that worked on the project, are also just a couple of miles from the Hive. I live and work just a few miles from the Hive. D. Crane, the landscape architect, is nearby. The lumber yard is just a few miles away. And I think in this case, it turned out that not only was the building footprint small, but the construction footprint was small. And I think that not only is that more eco-friendly all around, it also aids in reducing our carbon footprints. And it's just practical to be able to have subs drop by. But I think it also helped create a synergy around the construction during the project. And it kind of reinforced that very idea of an ADU in Austin, where the point of the ADU is to kind of build more urban density within single family neighborhoods near downtown, and help support overall livability and walkability of the community. And when we live near a city center, we're also living and working closer to amenities like the ones we use to build the Hive. And ultimately, this reduces traffic and commuting and builds stronger communities. I think this is a good segue into a conversation about missing middle housing that I think Scott Harvey has prepared and wants to talk about. And then I was hoping Kirthi would still be online, so she could also speak directly to her own experience with this.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. That was a great segue. So I mentioned at the beginning that I am also on Urban Design Committee, and for the past, I think it's been 6 years now, this is our 6th year, the two committees have been partnering to highlight a house that is of the middle density type, which is something that we started to want to highlight and advocate for in a certain sense during the height of the Code Next battle. And we have a great example of what's called an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit with the Hive here. Oh yeah, I'm introducing it. Sorry, we had a little technical thing here. So it is an ADU, it's an accessory dwelling unit. It's in the backyard of an old bungalow house. I'm not sure when the house is to my right. It's not part of the tour because Nicole didn't work on that house, but
The original house was built in 1929 and moved to that location in 1950.
cool. Thank you, Kirthi. So I have some slides to share with you, and I'm going to share my screen and we'll talk a little bit more about the missing middle, except that I can't. Here it is. Okay, so missing middle is a phrase coined by David Petroluk from Opticos Design. They're a design firm out in Berkeley. I think they're in Berkeley. And his definition, you can see he has a nice succinct definition of a range of house scale buildings with multiple units, compatible in scale and form with detached single family homes and located in a walkable neighborhood. And that's that really comes to the heart of the point of why we like to have middle density housing, especially in urban areas. The house scale part is important because I think a lot of people hear the word density and they think of huge buildings or huge multi-family complexes. But the walkability is also something that needs to be stressed because the middle density and the missing middle component is something that's part of a larger discussion of the new urbanism movement. But I always like to say that new urbanism is actually very old urbanism. It's the way we used to build cities. And old cities, think of European cities, places like Savannah, even parts of Boston here in the States are very much more walkable than a lot of the cities that have developed most of their fabric after World War II. So we use a little bit longer definition in Urban Design Committee. We just talk about the middle, referring again to middle density. It's between single family homes on single lots and larger scale multifamily buildings. And so here is a transect of the typologies that we talk about mostly in the missing middle. The ADU is a little bit outside of the, it's on the edge because it is usually behind a single family home, but it is a separate unit. Duplexes, triplexes, courtyard apartments, garden clusters, row houses, multiplexes, and then live work. We have, prior to the 80s, we had a lot more duplexes in Austin. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that at the end. This is the life cycle poster that we put together to show the diversity of people that would live in the neighborhood that is more diverse in its form. So a lot of people have an ADU, they raise their family in a front house, and then when the kids go, they move into the ADU, they can rent out the front house. So we have a lot more variety in the typical kind of mixed neighborhood. 3 minutes, okay. So they're telling me I have to speed up here. So why is it important? Well, there are a lot of people in the boomer generation and in the millennial generation who do want to have much more walkable neighborhoods. And most importantly, it's a question of sustainability because really we can't keep building sprawl and depending on cars for, you know, another 100 years. So why is it missing? Well, it's missing because there was a lot of industrial intrusion. I have another slide here I put in. This is a picture of Manchester, England in 1870. Very dystopian looking. The village of Euclid, Ohio, which is a suburb of Cleveland. Well, Ambler Realty in Euclid, Ohio wanted to build some development, some industrial development. The village of Euclid passed zoning laws to prevent them from doing that, and it ended up going to the Supreme Court. And the village of Euclid won, and that's where we get the term Euclidean zoning, which is the typical kind of zoning that we're used to, where you have single family homes in one neighborhood and you have businesses in one neighborhood, et cetera. And that just became the norm after the 20s and with the development of large scale tract housing. And of course, cars everywhere, cars. The more you could have mobility with your car, you didn't need walkability as much. So that's where it went. That's why it's missing. Oops. I'm going to skip this because we don't have a lot of time. These are just some of the developments in Austin code over the years that we had a lot of duplexes prior to 1984, and it just became harder and harder over the years to develop duplexes because of the various restrictions that were put on in the building code. And so we like to talk about form-based land development code as an alternative to traditional zoning. It is a way of planning cities that focuses on building form as it relates to the streetscape and adjacent uses and encourages mixed uses within neighborhoods, relies on design concepts and patterns intended to preserve the assets and character of the community. So ADUs like the Hive have been the most prevalent form of middle density development in Austin since City Council eased some restrictions on their development in 2015. That primarily has to do with square footage of the land and the square footage of the allowable square footage of the ADUs. And I want to turn this over to Kirthi very quickly. She wanted to talk about taxes and how having an ADU helps her to maintain the property here in Austin.
Actually, it's kind of a double bind. I'm very much a proponent of what you've just described in terms of middle density. However, as a homeowner, you know, I'm trying to balance, you know, when I built the beehive, it was great before it got assessed. And then suddenly my taxes went from 4,000 a year to 12,000 a year. So the state is not in alignment with Austin. So now I'm kind of like clinging financially I have to rent the beehive as an Airbnb so that I get to stay there when I'm not traveling for work. It's a real double bind, and it's running the middle class out of neighborhoods like this. I'm in my 50s, and all my friends, you know, I went to the University of Texas. I studied film, I work in television, I was in bands, and I was part of the artistic community that makes Austin a really desirable, exciting place to be. But hey, Austin, you're running everybody out of town with the way taxation works. None of my friends can afford to stay in their houses in Central Austin. None of my friends can afford to buy houses in Central Austin. And the young people who live in the front house can barely afford that rent that used to be very cheap before property taxes made the rent so high. So 4 of them are living up there, and it's not easy. Not to reveal any personal information, but because I do a credit check, these are people in their 30s, and millennials are screwed right now. So middle density housing is very important, but it has to be affordable. And this community of architects, you have a very important mission in the future. You need to join the social justice mission that's sweeping the world right now and start creating beautifully designed, affordable housing, because we are in a crisis. And Austin is just the example of what you're going to see everywhere. You know, if you travel the country, those homeless encampments on the side of the highways, that's starting to be everywhere. Seattle, Portland, and we can't have beautiful, livable Austin type cities unless we address gorgeously designed, affordable housing where people can be, have light, have nature, and it's, you know, not too expensive. So that's my rant. Thank you for letting us participate. Thank you, Nicole.
Okay,
You
I'm
still
sorry to go
love
back to you,
the
Nicole.
Hive, right? As a retreat.
It's a very beautiful place. I love it very dearly. I'm going to spend the winter there this year. I'm so excited.
I know. I'm with you. I also have a house in East Austin, and we fight the property tax issue ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I hear you, and I wish we as architects could do more. I appreciate the sentiment.
Well, it makes me want to understand what are the affordable housing granting, like, how can this organization aggressively go after those grants and start getting those, like, affordable housing is going to be built. Why does it have to suck, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the funny thing about this place here is, as a cost per square foot, this place is probably a similar cost per square foot to affordable housing, but that doesn't have anything to, building costs are very different than taxes. Building costs are very different than, yeah, it's just not the same. It's not the same thing. And so as an architect, I can help control some of the building costs and make suggestions like, let's tailor the space to be smaller, and so you don't have as much volume to heat and cool. So you have, so you can open the windows and take advantage of breezeways and natural light without having to use energy. And if we have a smaller volume, then you're using less materials. You're buying less materials. You're saving in costs that way. But all of those savings don't have anything to do with your the tax burden that occurs after that. So I hear you on that. Since I think we only have a limited amount of time, I would, like to talk maybe a little bit more about the design, but I think that's another, what you're bringing up is another conversation that's important. Is she gone?
No, I'm here. No, totally agree. I
so-
hate that design
so do you
is
have
not
any-
part of the discussion of affordable housing, because beautiful places to live are actually important to our spirituality, our psychology, our sense of well-being. The work you guys are doing is super important.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, and that's why we, in the design process, worked here to tailor the building so that it could fit into a more affordable budget. By buying things on Craigslist and at Home Depot and finding free materials and reusing materials in the area and kind of keeping it local, tailoring the whole space so that your utility bills aren't higher. But I think what I think the tax situation is separate from that. So I don't know how I, as an architect, can participate in that. But I think it's a great point to make. I mean, so for example, in this living room, one of the reasons we put this window well here is because it's north facing. So it's indirect light. It's not direct light. It's not going to be adding a lot of solar heat gain. You're going to get this nice view so that you don't have to have your lights on as often. It's across from where the utility easement runs into your neighbor's lot. And so we know your neighbor, because of that utility easement, will never be able to build a house across from this view. So from a design standpoint, we left that open so that you'd have, that view that feels more like a sanctuary. If we head upstairs, we used a local material. What's up? Okay.
About the wall, the leaning wall.
Yeah. So also in this space, the building footprint in this living room is tiny, and so we leaned this one wall just a couple of feet, and what that does is it makes this space feel much bigger, but you're not, you're still paying for a much smaller foundation. It opens up the space above so that the desk space that's right at the top feels both private but also public. We used a local material, the Shishugibon from Delta Millworks. They're one of the leading manufacturers of charred wood in the world, and they're right down the street. So when we had the opportunity to reuse this longleaf pine for cabinetry, it became the perfect opportunity to talk to our local Shishugibon company that's right down the street and pick a material that kind of coordinated well with that. And I think this black charred wood, which again is a very eco-friendly, kind of picking back up on some Japanese techniques, is a durable, long-lasting choice. We reused a lot of the cutoffs from, we didn't want to, we also were, something as architects that we try to do is think about waste. So we use all of the cutoffs from the charred wood floor and fashion them, actually drop house, fashion them into a closet partition. So we didn't have that material waste. Because the bed is built in, we didn't have to buy as much flooring. It's there's only about 25 square feet of floor space in this bedroom. And in most cases, even a small bedroom that's 10 by 10, that's 100 square feet. That's 5 times the construction cost. So in this case, we were able to use a nicer material, a more long-lasting, durable material for a lower cost. Again, in the bedroom, this is that mixture of the windows that we got off Craigslist and the Pella vinyl. This light fixture we found on eBay. So again, we're reusing materials, not buying new. Let's see, we tried to incorporate as much storage as we could in the space because we know in a really small area like this, you kind of have to use every nook and cranny. So Matt Prine, the cabinet maker, really worked hard to make sure all crafted these cabinets in a way that we're utilizing a lot of the space. And since Kirthi is here part of the time, it was important to her to have half the closet as private and half the closet for Airbnb guests. So again, this is just a very straightforward, simple sliding bypass door, but we put a lock on one side so that that's lockable for Kirthi. And this side can slide open or closed for guests. Let's take a look at this kind of office area. So I think it was important for Kirthi to have a little bit of a desk space. It turns out, I think with the longleaf pine that we had available, it turned out to we were able to get a fairly large desk space. And she was a fan of music and she had a record collection. And so we were able to, instead of just putting a handrail up here, we turned it into a bookshelf and some record storage underneath where it's normally just a knee space. And so with that, we just kind of double and triple purposing the space so that you don't have to build a bigger house. You can keep it more compact and you can design it in such a way that you're serving multiple functions within the same space. In this case, we fit a washer and dryer in this corner. Now, initially, I didn't think a washer and dryer was going to fit in this corner. I thought we were going to need a taller space, and initially it was going to go here, right at the top of the stair. But after we framed the exterior walls, I came in before we had framed any interior walls, and I measured this corner, and Kirthi and I looked for a washer and dryer that could fit into that space so that this could remain more open. You could have more desk space. This can kind of double as a folding table. Just again, finding 2 and 3 functions for the same space so that you're not building 2 or 3 rooms. In the bathroom, when we picked the charred floor, I really wanted to make sure that the flooring in the bathroom flowed with that. So again, because I was general contracting and designing it, we hadn't purchased the tile yet. And so I was able to, we found this very affordable porcelain tile. It was a 24 by 24 tile. But we had the tile installer, Gary Chester, really awesome tile installer, cut it in to match the pattern of the shake siding on the outside. I'll take you inside the bathroom. I guess also one of my favorite parts of the Hive is this view right here from the bathroom. So again, we're using, I think it's laminate countertops, which are more affordable. But with the longleaf pine, we went ahead and just took that all the way up and edge banded the laminate countertops with the longleaf pine, which gives it a more like a more custom look for the cost of something that's pretty low. This is one of my favorite views because you get the operable skylight in the bath, which is like that rectangle with natural light coming in at your face while you're standing at the sink. And then with the angled wall, originally I was thinking to fit like a medicine cabinet into that corner. But when we got into the space, it seemed to make so much more sense and feel more like a sanctuary or like a retreat by kind of looking again back to those Japanese concepts. And so instead, Drop House Design stopped by and we figured out how to make this just round mirror float. So you get kind of that, I think, very Zen-like feeling of a rectangle of light kind of shining on your face right where you want it. at a sink, and then this circle mirror that just looks like it's floating. Drop House also fashioned this built-in bench. So originally in here, Kirthy had wanted a bathtub. And so we have the bathtub in here, and I think she came to town. We did most of the project remotely, but she came to town, and when she got here, I think she decided and agreed that the tub really wasn't the best fit for the space. So we took it out, and this is actually how this copper towel bar came to be. This is what I was talking about earlier downstairs that Antonio, the plumber I love, helped me make. So originally, when there was a tub here, this was the copper, was going to be the hot and cold water for the tub. So when we switched to a shower, we knew that the glass would have to stay on this sink wall, and that the shower would have to be on this far wall. And I think we had wanted it to be on the ceiling, but we had already done the plumbing and the framing, and we already had the tub in. So I met with my plumber, and we agreed that the best thing to do would be to just cut the stucco in a kind of a small line and get it as high as we could on this wall. And then but I thought it would still look strange to have the hot and cold coming out here and then straight into this wall. So I had this idea to go ahead and turn it into a towel bar, kind of let the copper slide across the room, create that towel bar, and then head kind of a double towel bar, and then head back into this wall. I kind of had hoped that maybe the hot water coming through during the shower would even serve as a little bit of a towel warmer, but I doubt that is actually what's happening.
Okay,
Drop house design.
Nicole, we have some questions about the bathroom. So Karina's asking about, are the walls plaster, and who did the plaster?
Yeah, so all of the stuff throughout the house was done by Jose Rivera, and his contact information should be available in Socio. He's amazing. And so yeah, it's all waterproof, so it's consistent throughout, which I think helps with that feel of it being just feeling like a more peaceful space to be, because you're not changing materials from room to room. Is there another question?
Yeah, can you remind me of the artist who inspired the kitchen and bathroom lighting? The fixtures that you...
Yeah, his name is Andy Colquitt. I think Kirthy might be a friend of his. I am.
He has that beautiful compound on Holly Street. He has an artist compound on Holly.
Yeah. Yeah, he's
and the
amazing.
Plaster wasn't the plaster partly inspired by the fact that the front house had plaster work? We had done plaster work there.
Maybe that wouldn't surprise me, because I really loved the addition you had done to the main house by Bill Twitchell. Yeah, it was beautiful. He had incorporated a lot of like whimsical design elements. And and it also had like it had a bit of a Japanese recycled feel to it. So I was trying to pick up on that, knowing that was a style that you were attracted to.
Well, and the plaster is very soundproofing, by the way. It helps really make the space feel quiet and kind of muffled. It's really great for sound. When you blast that speaker downstairs with some records, pretty great acoustics.
Yeah, I think it definitely has that feeling that you're like in a spa, and has that natural hand to it that you see. Yeah, and this,
Nicole,
since we're in the shower, the frameless glass guys at Aero Glass, they had the idea to kind of leave this little gap at the back of the glass that they felt was better for letting moisture, not trapping moisture, just a little detail that they contributed. And the steel bench that Drop House designed, it's powder coated, but it's pulled off of the wall in such a way that when water sheds down the back of it, it's not getting caught on that edge, and creating a point that might be troublesome. So yeah, so that's just another detail. But
Hey, Nicole, we're about at the end of our time. AIA is going to let us have
Okay.
a few extra minutes, but we have a more general question, not about
Okay.
the bathroom, but Christy is asking, are you still doing projects as a GC? And what was the one thing you learned by being the GC that has informed your design approach?
Am I still doing projects as a GC?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And what's the one thing you learned being the GC?
Well,
That has informed your design approach. What did you learn by being a GC that has informed your design approach? You know,
what did I learn as well?
Being a GC that informed your approach.
Oh, the design approach. I mean, yes, I'm still GCing some projects. I tend to only do that when it's a more unique project in nature. Right now, I'm working on a project that I love called The Perch. That's for the landscape architects of Kirthy's project, that I think is also a really fantastic space. They're also a client that was looking for something more unique, and so that's always exciting as an architect. On the construction side, something that I like about being the architect and the GC together is just what we've been talking about today. Having that flexibility to pivot and take advantage of a material or an idea or something a subcontractor suggests that just makes the space better. I also just love having those conversations with subcontractors. I learn from them every day. I'm GCing a second project right now, which is it's like a downtown loft in Austin, and we're just renovating a kitchen portion. This is the second project I've done with that client, and one of the things I love about that client is they also really kind of embrace ideas that are a little bit more unique, a little different. And that one, we like pulled out all of the drywall around a chase, and we're exposing all the pipes. And he really wanted his cabinetry to have like some natural texture. And we had looked at a lot of wood options, went to Delta, and in the end, he actually decided that he loved a natural texture of the plaster. And so of course, in Austin, there is no shortage of really talented subcontractors. And I hooked up with, I contacted a subcontractor that does plaster that I thought his work was really amazing. And I asked him if he would make cabinet, like plaster, be willing to try to make plaster cabinetry doors. And he said he had never done it before, but he would give it a try. And I think it turned out great. I think that's that feel that you get from the plaster walls here, he now can experience in his space through the cabinetry. So one of the things I love about GCing in general is that you learn a lot in that process. You learn things that you don't learn when you're just sitting at a desk and drawing, and you get to pivot and to take advantage of some of the opportunities that come up.
Okay, we have one more question, and then I think we'll wrap up because we're a little bit over time.
Okay.
Question is, what is the construction cost per square foot on the project?
I think we ended up at about 150,000 total, which is about $300 a square foot here. I mean, keep in mind that is priced in 2013. We finished construction in 2015. And so I know today, just based on the cost of living, the cost of materials, the cost of construction, I don't think we can repeat this today for like even 1.5 times the cost. I think it would be more like double today, just based on what it cost a subcontractor to make a living and to be a part of the project. So I think, yeah, so I think probably for Kirthy at the time, that felt like a lot of money and maybe even more than she wanted to spend. I think today, 7, 8 years later, that, you know, people would love to be building at that price point. So.
Okay.
Does that answer their question? Any other questions?
I don't see any other questions in the Q&A, so
Okay.
I guess, do you
Should
have
we-
a closing statement or?
No, I guess I'll just say that, no, I think for me, what's really exciting is just to be working on projects that, you know, I don't know, like maybe to quote Marie Kondo, that spark joy. It's fun for me to work on projects where I feel like the client is open to interesting ideas and into you know, is interested in kind of playing a little bit. And for me, you know, it's most important to me that based on what the client's needs are, everything is right where it should be. It's kind of, if they were an architect, what would they design for themselves? Try to put myself into that position. And I just hope that the work resonates with them and even with a larger audience. Anyway, thanks for joining the tour. I really appreciate it.
Right. Thank you,
Bye,
Julia. I
everyone.
guess that's
Thank
back
you.
to you. Oh, Karina's just saying thank you.
Okay, thank you.